Good morning. Today we're going to continue studies of characters within the Old Testament upon which the entire Bible is based and like. We're going through and continuing with Jacob. We're going to be looking at Judah, okay, the line of the tribe of Judah, and then Moses. And I want to start out with something with this. Who do we trust in our society? There's not a heck of a lot of trust out there right now. Politicians, the people, the government. When I was growing up, it was pretty easy. You didn't trust the Russians. Okay, well, you still don't. All right, so that's a side point. Okay, but the catch was, I'm sorry. All right, whoops, what am I doing? Okay. Aha, my coffee. All right, there we go. And I said, maybe the reason we don't trust people has to do more with us. Because we know our own failures. And we know how flawed we are, so how can we trust anybody else? Anybody seen Top Gun Maverick? Oh, yeah. 5 times for me. Okay? The reason was, it's pretty ironic, because the first Top Gun came out my last quarter of undergraduate. And it pretty much reflected how I was feeling at that point. Now, let the record show that I'm born on July 4th, 1964. Tom Cruise was born on July 3rd, 1963. And that I am 1 inch taller than Tom Cruise. Okay, let the record show this. Okay, but when that movie came out, I was going to graduate school, and it really reflected exactly how I felt at that moment. I was cocky. I'm going to grad school. The world is my oyster. I'm going to get out. I'm going to run a research division for a large corporation, and I'm going to become CEO of a multinational corporation and own my own island, preferably Australia. And then Top Gun Maverick comes out, and I'm watching this, and here he is, looking back at his life going, probably shouldn't have done that. Oh, definitely shouldn't have done that. And I could have done that better, okay? And you're sitting there looking at life and going, yeah, I feel you, buddy, okay? So I just throw out to us that perhaps something to gain from the next couple of lessons we're going to be going at is as we look in our life and we realize we're flawed. We realize we're not perfect. And so, good grief, I can't even trust myself. How should I trust other people? To realize what God has done with people that weren't perfect either. And that we're a lot more flawed than we are. Okay? And to remember that God, on the other hand, is like Rodney Dangerfield. He gets no respect. We just sort of go to him whenever we need him. But throughout Genesis, God has shown that he can be trusted. The phrase talk is cheap. I have daughters, and as they're growing up, I taught them, I said, look, words mean things to girls, they mean nothing to boys. A guy will say anything, okay? You only assess a guy based on his actions, not what he says, okay? But God's words and his actions are trustworthy. Abraham got this to a certain extent. Isaac, yeah, not so much. Jacob, well, we're going to see. And Jacob's sons are chips off the old block, okay? And they really have problems, all right? And it does do what we tend to have seen in our own lives for all of us at this stage in our life. Our kids tend to amplify either our good qualities or our bad qualities as they're going through life, okay? And so this brings up the question, what does it take for us to trust God? What does it take for us to believe that God can do something with us even though we may not believe in ourselves? Okay, so Genesis 34, 1 through 30. Dinah is one of the daughters of Jacob. And it states this, when Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land, and when Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he laid with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, and he loved the young woman, and he spoke tenderly to her. And so he spoke to his father Hamor, saying, I want this girl for my wife. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field, so he held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father, came to him and said, look, okay, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourselves. You will dwell with us and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it. Let me find favor in your eyes. And whatever you say to me, I will do. Ask for me a great bride price. Any gift as you will, and I will give whatever you say. Only give me the young woman to be my wife. Well, the guy's not great, okay? But, at least he's wanting to marry her. So, there's something. But here's Jacob's son's response. Well, we'd be happy to discuss this with you. Unfortunately, we can't do this unless you do something first. You and all the men in the city need to be circumcised. Okay? And they said, okay, that's fine. Now, I'd just like to point out for a minute, for adult men to say, okay, and remember, there's no general anesthesia at this time. To do this, A, that surprises me, but B, they do this, and what do the sons of Jacob do? It says, on the third day, when all the men were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords, came up to the city while it felt secure, and killed everybody. Killed all the males. Not the guy who had done this to his sister. Everybody. Okay? They took the flocks, they took their herds, they took their donkeys, whatever was in the city and in the field, all their wealth, all their little ones, all their wives, everything that was in the houses, they captured and plundered. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, what have you done? Do you realize the trouble you have brought on me? You have made me stink in the eyes of everyone around here. And they were like, yeah, we're not sorry. Okay? Now, granted, as a father of daughters, Liesl brought a guy home a while back. He seemed like a nice guy, business student, putting himself through school. His dad's a minister. I'm going, okay, I like this so far. But we're walking around the farm, and I forget what he said, but he made a comment to me, and I looked at him and said, look, you seem like a nice young man. If you and my daughter date, that's fine. Y'all break up, these things happen. But I looked you straight in the eye and I said, you physically harm my daughter, and I will kill you without a moment's thought. And he didn't back up. He didn't break eye contact. He just looked me straight in the eye and said, I understand that, sir. And I'm like, I like him. And Liesl said, you can bring him back home. Okay, this guy's got spine. I like him. Okay, so part of me is like, okay, the guy deserves something. But the entire town? And Jacob's going, what have you done? Now, notice one thing we do need to understand here is in Old Testament times and in the Middle East, we are an individualistic society. Okay? And every one of us in America, we view ourselves as individuals. In the Middle East, everything is group. You rise and fall as a group. So if some person in that town did something wrong, in their eyes, everybody did something wrong. And if some person in your family did something wrong, everybody in your family is wrong. So we got to understand that mindset coming in through this. Now, the brother's response is, yeah. Did they trust God to take care of it or even ask God? No. All right? And they go on, and Jacob is now afraid. And does he trust God to take care of it or protect him? Nope. Okay? And in verse 31, Simeon and Levi have no guilt. They took care of things themselves, and now Jacob's worried. And in Genesis 35, God's sitting there going, okay. Now remember, God's wrestled with Jacob. God's shown him. He saved him against all these things. He's just walked him through this. Okay? But he keeps trying to have to reinforce this with Jacob, going, I'm with you. Okay? You don't need to worry. And so Jacob gets a little bit of it. In verse 2, he says, okay, I need my family to get rid of their idols. Now, I don't know if you ever noticed this. How much has been going on in Genesis so far with Jacob? Okay, he's got adult kids, and he's like, okay, all right, I guess we need to get rid of the idols now. Does that not reflect us too? I know God wants me to do this, but letting go of what we've been doing is hard. All right? And so God renames Jacob, and once again, Jacob sets up another pillar of rocks. How many to-do notes or reminder notes on sticky pads do you have around your house through time or things of this sort? And I guess for Jacob, it's like if there's enough pillar of rocks floating around, Palestine, every time he sees one, it might remind him that, okay, God was with me there, 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 God was with me there. Maybe it'll just get in that God will stay to be with me. So do we trust God? What about when God doesn't choose us for something we want? Or when God doesn't do the things the way we think is best? Maybe that's the difficult part of trying to trust God. because we think we know best, which goes all the way back to Genesis and Eve, right? Remember in the Garden of Eden how Eve was tempted. Oh, take the fruit. You'll be like God. Then you'll be in control. And especially in an individualistic society like the United States, that's what we want. We want to be the ones in control. Abraham trusted God over his own judgment. He was willing to sacrifice Isaac. God chose Jacob over Esau. Jacob wasn't a flawless example of spiritual leadership by any stretch of the imagination. Do you think Esau ever got angry because he was the firstborn and said, "Why not me, God?" Because he's watching his brother do all this and make all these mistakes, and Esau's going, Him? And if you have children, how many times have they played that game with you? Well, she did this, or he did that. It is the oldest one in the book. But Esau got over it, and God blessed him. And actually in chapter 36, notice Esau's descendants, God told him, I'll make a great nation out of you. And he did. Even Laban understood that God was blessing him because of Jacob. He's like, I don't get it, because I see some flaws in Jacob, but hey, I'm hitching my wagon to this horse. Leah got upset that Jacob didn't choose her over Rachel. She named her sons to show her spite. Rewatched A Beautiful Mind the other day. Now, for those of you who aren't in the math, go there. But there's a great scene in the movie where this guy is a brilliant economist. They're at a bar, and these are nerds, okay? They're math PhDs, all right? That's always attractive to women, right? All right? And they're sitting there, and they're going to a bar, and they're trying to pick up women, and this always fails miserably, okay? So a group of young ladies come in the bar, and they're all heading to the one they think is most beautiful, and suddenly this mathematician realizes, we're doing this all wrong. Going on, he says, if we go to her, she's going to blow us off. And then we're going to go to her friends. Well, none of them are going to say yes to dance with us or anything, because no girl wants to feel like she's second choice. But if we blow off the blonde and go straight to her friends, they're going to be so excited that somebody's come straight to them instead of her. They'll dance with us. And the guys are going, what? He says, it's just math. And when Gretchen and I watch this movie, she goes, that's just common sense. Why do you have to put it in mathematics? I'm like, okay, I don't have time to get into this. But, it's important to have it in math. But the point is, no one wants to feel second best. And Leah made that very clear. The name she chose for her kids, and you think that doesn't impact children over time? Every time somebody utters their name, it's going, oh, this is why, yeah. I'm also ran, okay? Jacob reinforced those bad habits. And in chapter 35, verse 22, Reuben, the firstborn, okay, Simeon and Levi are number 2 and 3 of the sons. And they've already, they're blown away in their dad's sight. And here's Reuben. And he's trying to say, I am the one in charge. I'm the guy. And he sleeps with his father's concubine, which in that society was showing, I'm the boss. Absalom did this with David's concubine later. And Jacob's not having any of this. He may be the firstborn, but you're off the list. Now, the reason I want you to understand this is that it's follow the money. The firstborn is the one in power. The firstborn gets the majority of the wealth, gets the blessing, all of this. The firstborn, in terms of sons of Jacob, are already out. Number 2, number 3. Who's number 4? That would be Judah. That would be Judah. Now, later on, we'll get into specifically, because Jacob does clarify this, very specific. But Jacob's sons now begin to see that Joseph might be the chosen one. He's the one having dreams of everyone bowing down to him. Okay? Now, older siblings, what's the place of the younger sibling? Well, their place is just to get harassed by the older ones. You know, I have a younger sister, 6 years old, and she's like, the 10,000-foot cliff, because we'd be wrestling on the couch. And of course, she never won. I would just shove her off the couch. And she's like, I hated that. I'm like, but that's the job of younger siblings, to be harassed. But here's this younger sibling having dreams of, your sheaves were all bowing down to mine. And they're going, oh, you think you're in charge, huh? And so we know the story. They're out in the fields. Joseph goes out to see them, and they see him and are like, ugh, let's get rid of him. Because they want to be number one. They want to be the ones that are in charge. They want to be the ones that great things happen through. And so, they get rid of it. And Reuben is sitting there going, well, let's not kill him. And why is he doing this? Probably because he's trying to get in the good graces of being the firstborn. And I don't think you understand how important this is. You know, my family background on my mom's side, we're Assyrian, Ashuri. And so we were the Semites before the Jews were Semites, okay? So Abraham came out of that. And still to this day, firstborn status has very specific meanings. I'm the firstborn in my family. And several years ago, my parents, who were living in Nashville, my mother began to get Alzheimer's. Okay? And so Gretchen and I had plans. We were expanding out the house, and we were going to move Mom and Dad out here. But Mom's Alzheimer's progressed very quickly. And Dad told me, he said, we have decided to stay here. Why? They'd been in Nashville for 30 years. My sister and her family lived 2 doors down. All their friends from church were there, everything. And he said, we're going to stay here, which was their choice. But I have a foot both in the U.S. world of individualism and the Assyrian world of that. And so I'm flying back from teaching class in China, and I land in L.A. and catch a flight into Dallas. And the gentleman sitting next to me on the flight is Assyrian. He's out of Oklahoma City. His father's a deacon in the Aramaic church there, or was. His father had gotten Alzheimer's. And we're sitting there, and we're talking, and we're sharing, and we had a great flight. We're talking through all this. And we land in DFW. And he said, well, I'm going to catch my flight. I got to go catch this flight to Oklahoma City. You're heading to Nashville, right? And I said, no, I'm here. He said, oh, you've got another business meeting before you head home? And I said, no, I live here. And he just looked me up and down and said, oh. Sorry, it's still hard for me to share this. Because in that moment, I had been judged and found wanting. And it would not matter if I tried to explain to him, my sister lives 2 doors down, this was their choice, etc. It did not matter. Because I was the firstborn. And there is no excuse for that. Okay? So you've got to understand how this impacted everything. So Reuben's sitting there going, I've screwed up. Maybe I can redeem myself. But these things tend to be a one strike and you're out event in the Middle East. Okay? And so that's not happened. And Judah says, show me the Benjamins. Why kill him when we can make money? Okay? That's a pretty American thing to do. It's like, let's maximize shareholder value here, shall we? Okay? Let's just sell him. And they do. Okay? So this is Judah. And then next is Judah and Tamar in chapter 38. Now, Judah had 2 sons. Okay? They died. Okay? The first died, who was the husband of Tamar. Then he calls the second son to go and be Tamar's husband, because that was law, so you could continue to have children, you could continue to have rights to the land, etc. And he dies. And Judah blames Tamar, apparently. Okay. So he's like, I've got another son, okay? I'll let you remarry him, but he never lets that happen. And she realizes what's going on. So Judah's wife dies. And it says, after he was comforted, he goes down. That Judah went down with his brothers. And, hold on. Flip over this. In the course of time, the wife of Judah, Shua's daughter, died. And when Judah was comforted, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, he and his friend Hira the Abdullamite. Okay. Now, right before that, Judah is going down to visit somewhere else. And Tamar hears about this, and she's like, okay. And she dresses as a prostitute by wearing a veil. That's the irony in the Middle East at this time. Okay? Right now you're seeing everything going on in Iran, and women are burning their veils and their head coverings because under Islam, you cover your face and the like to show modesty. At that time, you covered your face to be a prostitute. Okay? So it's ironic how cultures adapt and change. So she's wearing a veil. Okay? And he sees her. Right? And when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. And he turned to her at the roadside and said, "Come, let me come into you." For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, "What are you going to give me that you may come into me?" And he answered, "I'll send you a young goat from the flock." And she replied, "Yeah, and how do I know this is going to happen? Prove it." I mean, this is very much a business transaction. And he said, "All right, what pledge shall I give you?" And she said, "Your signet, your cord, and your staff that's in your hand." And he gave it to her and went into her, and she conceived. And then she arose, went away, and put back on the garments of her widowhood. Now, Judah sent his friend with the young goat to pay this debt. And the guy goes down, he's like, "Where's the temple prostitute?" And the local people are going, What temple prostitute? What are you talking about? You outsiders got no clue what's going on here. So he goes back to Judah and he said, "I tried." So fast forward, and about 3 months later, Judah was told, "Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has been immoral. Moreover, she is pregnant by immorality." And Judah said, "Bring her out and let her be burned." Right? I mean, he's the man, right? He is the man. And that's when she says, she sends the signet, the staff, and his cord with somebody and says, "Tell him the owners of these is the father." And Judah begins to grow up. Because Judah finally says, no excuses. Well, not even, never mind, I'm trying to cover myself. He says, "She is more righteous than I am." Judah has begun to see this is his problem. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the beginning of adulthood. When you start taking responsibilities for your own actions. And you start realizing, I got no one to blame but myself. And from that point in time, we start seeing Judah change things. Fast forward several years. Joseph is now in Egypt. Okay? And there's a famine. And Joseph has gone from slave to second in command, second most powerful person on the planet. And they need food. And so they go down. Joseph realizes who they are. We know the story. He sort of sets them up. He says they're spies, claims all this. And he's talking to them, and he finds out they have a younger brother. Okay? And they tell him, if you come back, you better bring the brother with you. Well, they go back, they tell their father this. And the father does not want to let go of Benjamin. So he's continuing his bad parenting ways. He had a favorite in Joseph that he made above and beyond everybody else. And now he's doing it again with Joseph's brother from the same mother, Benjamin. Again, how would you feel if your parents had blatantly said, "Your sibling, this is the one we really like. You, okay. But this is the one we really like." That'll mess up anybody. And yet, it's time to go back. And the father will not let go of Benjamin. And Judah is the one that convinces him to go. And he said, "Father, we could have been there and back twice already. We don't have any food left. We've got to have food to eat. I will take responsibility for Benjamin. I, Judah." Because apparently He's been growing up since then. And the father finally says, okay. So they take him back down. Joseph knows his brothers, right? I just ask you to think about this. If you'd grown up in a dysfunctional household like that, you haven't seen these brothers who sold you. And that was the better deal because they were originally going to kill you outright. Okay? And you know this. You sat in a hole and listened to them debate. Do we kill him? Do we sell him? I don't know. Which one's better for us? Okay? You listened to this. Forget about having your feelings hurt. Okay? I mean, there would be whole books in the psychiatric DSM-IV manual for that one. Okay? Traumatic sibling bizarro syndrome. I got no clue. Okay? And yet, here's Joseph, and he's going, yeah, I don't trust him, and I wouldn't. I mean, why would you? Let's see if they've changed. So what he first does is he tries to trigger them, for better phrases, okay? And we've all played this game. Picture the last time you were in a discussion with your spouse, and you were losing said discussion. Well, I'm not getting the details here. But anyone who's been losing a discussion, what's one of the tried and true methods you fall back onto? Well, what about when you did this? Okay? Yeah, I'm trying to distract the scenario. Well, what about when you did this? Happens all the time. When Jesus met with a Samaritan woman, and she realizes, oh, good grief, what does this guy know about me? She immediately tries to derail the conversation by getting in a theological conversation. Well, you Jews say this. Okay, what do you think about that? And Jesus is like, yeah, not going there. But that's the thing we do. And so Joseph's smart enough that he brings the brothers in, he has a banquet with them, he's giving them gifts, but what does he do for Benjamin? Benjamin gets 5 times as many of everything. The food, the gifts, and everything. He's triggering them purposely. Well, I know what you did to me when I got 1 coat. Let's see what you do now. And they're going, okay, well, they're not responding the way they used to. Maybe they have grown up a little bit, but he's still not buying it. He gives them the food. He sends them on their way, but he sets up Benjamin by putting his gaba in Benjamin's sack. And he tells his executive commander, his chief guy, to go do this. Did you ever think what was going through this guy's mind, getting all these orders? You want 5 for him? And okay. Well, okay. I just hear and obey. Now, to put this in perspective, it would be like this. You go to D.C. and you take a tour of the White House. And you are leaving, and the Secret Service grabs you, and they say, we need to check your bag because the president's missing something. Okay, you go, sure, I didn't take anything. And they find said item in your bag. And you're going, I got no clue how they got that. Right. Tell it to the judge. Okay? I mean, because back in 1988, I was on spring break in D.C. with some friends of mine from school. And this was when, that time, Vice President George Bush was doing the Challenger Memorial in Arlington Cemetery. We happened to be there. And so we're on the front row. This is great. Okay? And this is in the old days. I had a camera with film. Okay? And we're in the front row right there. My girlfriend's with me, our best friends from college. We're all here. And I'm taking pictures, and I ran out of film. And so I just reach into my camera bag to grab some more film. That's not a good idea. Because I'm on the front row, this big camera bag. I reach quickly in this film, and 2 Secret Service guys grab me, and Uzis start coming out, and they're about to check me. And I'm like, film. And I slowly lift it up, and my girlfriend looks at me and goes, are you just a total idiot? And my best friend looks at me and says, we're going to die. And if I die, I'm going to kill you. Okay? So, that was just moving quickly into a bag. you've got something that should have been in the White House or in the Oval Office, and they find that on your person. At the very least, you're going into a federal prison until they can figure this all out. And here's Benjamin. And they bring them all back, and here is what is stated. Genesis 46, verses 18 through 20. Judah went up to him and said, "My Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against me, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to her servants, bring him down to me." Now notice, no extracurricular commentary is as useful for most of us. Not his father loves him, but he doesn't love us. Those little passive-aggressive things we always want to throw in. He said his father just loves him. "And you said to your servants, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. And we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. But you said to us, unless the youngest brother come down with you, you shall not see my face again. We went back to your servant my father, and we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, go again, buy us a little food, we said, we cannot go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down. For we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. And your servant my father told us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I will never see him since. And if you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring my gray hairs down to evil in Sheol. Now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with me, then all his life is bound up in the boy's life. As soon as he sees the boy's not with us, he'll die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant, become a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Therefore, take me instead. Make me a slave instead. And let the boy go back to his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? Because I fear to see the evil that would find my father." Judah has grown up. Judah is adulting. And Judah is saying, I'll be a slave here for the rest of my life. Spare the boy. It's not about me anymore. And he claims the prize. In Genesis 49, verses 1 through 10, Jacob points out what's going to go on. He called his sons before he's going to die, and he said, gather yourselves together that I may tell you what will happen to you. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the firstfruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power, but unstable as water. You shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed and then defiled it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons are violence are your swords. Let my soul not come into your counsel. Do not be joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willingness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be your anger, for it is fierce, and your wrath, for it is cruel. By the way, the tribe of Levi became the priests. Okay? All that anger, all that rage, and God said, yeah, we can fix that. You're going to be the priests. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies, and your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down and he crouched as a lion, and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Judah went from selling off his brother to taking responsibilities for his actions and willing to sacrifice himself for his brother. And God said, I can use that. So the takeaways. As we start looking at these characters and expanding this, I want you to think about it. You think you got a dysfunctional family? You think you have psychological problems? I'll pitch you against any of these people and let the psychs figure out who's in worse shape, okay? God can work with anybody, whether you're adulting or not. God was working with these people even when they weren't taking responsibility for their actions. I'm sure God was up there going, once again? Please. But He kept working with him because we were imperfect. So if you're imperfect, join the club. If you're anxious, if you're depressed, if you're worried about the future, if you're upset about the past, join the club. Do you not think through all those times, Judah didn't think? Great. I mean, because when they first went down to Joseph and he was setting him up, what did the brothers say? This is what happens. We sold Joseph off. God's coming back to get us. Okay? Whatever guilt you have for your past, whatever difficulties you're still grappling with, whatever is in your life that keeps you from trusting God or trusting other people, God can still overcome. And God can still use you to do things on this earth. Probably won't be the way you think, because God doesn't work that way. Okay? But God can still use you. We're going to look here at Judah, this is the tribe from which the king came. This is the tribe from which Jesus came. And this was the flawed person God used. We're going to look at Moses next. We're going to see another flawed person. Okay? And just as a side point, I'd like to point out that in going through this, it A, shows us what God can do with us, and B, I think it's a great example to show us and reinforce to us the Bible's true. Academics love to say, well, this was written after these events, and scribes put this together to come up with a national story to make people feel good about themselves and go through this. Really? Think about the stories you grew up with the leaders of our nation. George Washington never told a lie. The cherry tree. This stuff didn't happen, but it was made up to say, look, this is what we can aspire to. Okay? Think about any person you know who's really into politics. I don't care left, right, or in between. Whoever their person is can do no wrong. Right? They can tell you about all the flaws of the other side and their person. But their person can do no wrong. Here's the Bible and going, yeah, all our people, we're going to list out everything wrong they did. Really? That's how our national stories are written. Right now, you're watching this with Ukraine. You're watching a culture come up with its own society and life. Do you think in the future anybody's going to be listing Zelensky's bad jokes when he was a comedian? No, they're going to be talking about lines like, I don't need a ride, I need bullets. Okay? This is what human people do. But the Bible's going, nope, this is from God. And we're going to show you all the flaws. And we're going to show you what God did with those people. And from that, we'll show you what God can do with you. So this week, I urge you, as you look back on your life, as you're worried about what you've done, own it. And realize God can work anyway. It's okay. And go watch Top Gun Maverick one more time. Y'all have a good one.